Okay, everybody, I think I am now recording and sharing my screen with you guys, and we're going to pick up where we left off on our tutorial. So here's NetBeans. Here is the one tutorial file we've been working on. Here's the second tutorial file we've been working on, which involved a designer and some code where we kind of left off. To help work on this tutorial, I'm going to scroll down on our website and open up both the instruction document and the PDF folder of PDFs of code. That would be helpful. So the instruction document and the PDF of all the code. And I'll zoom in on those so we can kind of find our place where we're at and start that timer as well. Timer started a little late. So we've done all this. We named everything yesterday. We even got into some of the coding for vehicle select. And so I'm going to scroll past. I know we haven't finished all this coding yet. But then when we're finished it, this would be the next step in our instructions that we're going to do. We're not going to do that quite yet because we have to finish some of the code for vehicle select. We only did part of the code yesterday, right? We coded these buttons by saying choose one and a button and a method called start. So we created methods and we've been putting code in there, but that code isn't completed yet. Okay. So here we are in start. And that's where we finished yesterday, was with this method start. And I said to you that you're going to probably have to comment out this line of code because it's going to use something that would cause an error if you didn't comment out that line of code. If that line of code wasn't commented out, it would generate an error. And the reason it generates an error is there's nothing in our code called globals right now. This thing called globals does not exist in our code. So it's not going to make any sense to the computer what globals is at this point. Okay. So that's why it shows you there's the error. The error is it cannot find something called globals. It thinks it's a variable. That's what it thinks it is, but it's actually not a variable. What it's going to be is, as you can see in the instructions here, we're going to create a brand new Java class called globals. So up to this point, before this unit, all of our code was in one Java class. You'd make a project, it would create a class, and it would work in that one class. When we started the course, all of our code also went in one method called main. But now we've learned to split our code up into multiple methods. But now we're seeing we can also split our code into multiple classes. Because right now our project has two classes. The original one that came with the project, and then that one that had a nice designer built into it to make a design. But now we're going to make another class. And to do this, you're going to go to File, New File in NetBeans. So let's do this together. File, New File. You can also do this by just clicking this icon right here. If you were clicking on the menus, that icon makes a new file. Just like the icon beside it makes a new project. But anyways, File, New File. So then there's lots of different types of files you can add. Add a Java class, a Java class. Go next, and then we just need to give it a name. And the name we're going to give it is with a capital G. That's important because, and I've said this in the course before, things that start with a capital are powerful in Java. And this is a whole class, so it's going to be classes are named with capital letters. So we're going to name it capital G globals, just like that. This new Java class called globals will be created and it will be added to your project. So now this is what your project will look like. Now we'll have another Java class in it. So we started with this one. This is the one we started with. And then we added this one, and now we're adding this one. Okay. Now, let me get rid of a little. Yours shouldn't have code in it like mine. Yours should look like this, where it's basically empty. Okay. All right. So that's what it looks like. So that would be what it looks like. And it says it will add this class to the project. Then it says you can complete that code and return here. So if we want, maybe what we should do right now is leave this PDF. Let's go back. Now let's open up the PDF called Globals. Because it's shorter. It's not that long of a PDF of code. So this would be useful for us to get this done right now. And then we'll go back and finish vehicle select. So a couple things we're going to need to change about this. Okay. We're going to need to change the author name and the date. Okay. So if you want, you could steal those from some of your other ones, right? So the author name and the date. And now we're at June 4th. We need a description for globals. For that, you could take it right off of the PDF. I could copy it. I could paste it. If when I paste it, it isn't quite perfect, it's got some weird spacing or something like that, I could clean it up with Alt-Shift-F after selecting that code. Select the code, press Alt-Shift-F, and it'll automatically format it for me. Okay, so now my globals class has the comment. Now, what about the code? And there's a little note here. It says the code below creates global variables. That's all this code is just a bunch of integers and strings, and then something a little fancier, something called a color, which we saw in the arrays unit, so it's not brand new to us. And then something called a vehicle, which we're going to get to. But for now, it says this code are global variables. However, as it says here, by adding the words public and static to the front of these global variables, okay, it means that these global variables will be shared with all the other classes. So they're not just global to one class, they're global to all the other classes, okay? Now, these words are covered in more detail in the 40S computer science course, but it's just a little look ahead at some of this stuff that is being used in this tutorial. So if you want, you can not only select the code here, but you could even select a comment if you want as well to put into your tutorial to help you learn this stuff. I'm going to skip this comment and I'm just going to select this code up to here. I realize there's one more line, but for now I'm going to copy that and I'm going to paste it. Now, as I pasted it, you can see the indent got a little screwed up. I'm going to then select it and do the Alt-Shift-F again to automatically format it. Okay, so that cleaned up the formatting. But there is one other thing that needs to happen here. Notice the word color is generating an error. However, there's a light bulb here. And the light bulb says, let's import color. In other words, it will add this line here to the top as well. And that's important. So now that this code is in there, I could go back to vehicle select. And then now in vehicle select, it's no longer an error. This is no longer generating an error. And if I was to run this thing, because we ran it yesterday to see how it would work, now with that line not commented out, it's not only not an error, but now it is actually placing that title at the top of my design. That title is coming from right here. So it's going from the globals class over to the other class because it is shared amongst all the classes. So it's taking the idea of global variables to yet another level. Okay. All right. And that's what the tutorial is designed to do, is to introduce these newer concepts to you in the idea of kind of a fun way. But it's a lot to digest. So you might be thinking, well, that was a lot to think about, Mr. Walks. Maybe I should put this comment into my example. Not that you'd be marked for it, but that way, if I later go back and look at this code, would be helpful to kind of grasp what's going on in this particular problem, right? Like to actually grasp kind of what this thing is dealing with here. Now, there might still be some little fix-ups you might have to fix in there, but that's not necessary, but you may want to put something like that in there just so that if you were to look back on this tutorial, like let's say this summer you decide to program for fun, it would help you to grasp what's going on in the tutorial itself, okay? But this comment is not necessary for your mark on this project. Okay, but there is one other thing in this globals class. It says the code below references another class that we're going to create. Again, so you can go and deal with this stuff right now and then come back and work on vehicle select. Or I can deal with this stuff right now. And so the order in which you do this isn't really that important. It's just that until you get some of this code all put together, you may end up generating some errors in your code. So it's okay to live with those errors. It's okay. But so what I'm going to do is I am going to take this line of code, public vehicle. I am going to put it in, my globals class. I realize it generates an error. I might even want to go and grab that comment just to help understand what's going on. I may want to even copy and paste that comment in above that. And then maybe even clean that comment up and fix any little weird spacing issues that might have come on to it when it worked. Actually, a lot of weird errors. But there it is, right? So this is another option that you could theoretically do. You don't have to do it, but at least now it's explaining what I need to do with the next part of this tutorial. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to make yet another class called vehicle. And to avoid typing, I'm going to copy this right now as well. And now go to File, New File, Java class, next, paste, vehicle with a capital V, finish. And for now, vehicle can just sit as this empty Java file. It's got nothing in it right now, but that will at least fix that error. There, vehicle is no longer generating an error. But that means that this class called globals is all done. Everything that is in the PDF for globals is now finished. That's good. So now I can go back to that folder. Globals is done. Now I can go back to vehicle select and continue where I left off, which was right here, right? I'd done start, and now I'm going to move on to work on this method called choose, which is a longer method. You can see here, it's a longer method. So now I'm going to go back to vehicle select and now start in on this method called choose. Okay, the start is done. This is a finished method. It's got its comment. It's got this thing called globals now. It's got other comments. Now, another side note, when you look at mine, you may notice that I spaced out little spaces between the comments and the code. You don't have to do that, okay? You're not required to line up your comments, line up like mine shows in the form. That is not necessary, okay? If you want to do that, it's of course an option for you. I'm using my tab key to space that out a little bit and make it line up better, but it's not necessary. Okay, let's go on now and work on this method called choose. Let me start with the comment. I'm going to get the comment for choose for the method, copy, paste, select, Shift-F to auto format. Okay, so what is this method going to do? Well, it's going to react to button clicks. So if we go back to our design, when I clicked on motorcycle, it would call my method called choose. So that's what I mean. So it will react to one of the button clicks. That's what this parameter's for. It says, well, which of the buttons? Is it the first, the second, or the third button? And what it's going to do is it's going to get rid of this form or this frame. Okay, this frame here in NetBeans will get disposed of. We no longer need to see it once we select a vehicle. And it will move on to the next form, or in Java they call them frames, but form, frame doesn't matter. What is this parameter for? Well, actually, if you look at this PDF here, I renamed the parameter vehicle. Instead of leaving it just called I'm going to call it vehicle. And it indicates which button I clicked on, and therefore which vehicle I'm going to choose, the motorcycle, the car, or the truck. Okay, so now I can move on to actually code the method itself, now that I know what the method's doing. All right, so let me get the first line of this line kind of at a time. Copy. Sometimes it does this. Sometimes NetBeans has this copy paste problem. Let me just see if I can paste it into. Okay, so that worked. I find sometimes NetBeans has this copy paste problem, and the only solution I found to it right now is to restart NetBeans. So bear with me for a second. It's probably good that I'm doing this because this might happen to you guys too. And so you'd be like, what's going on? Why won't my code copy paste? It could happen that this is the case. I see we have about 4 minutes left on the timer. So hopefully this will start quicker. Don't worry about this weird stuff on the desktop of my computer. That's for the grade 12s because they're weird. The grade 12s are weird. I'll take a sip of coffee. You guys take a sip of your coffee as well. If you shouldn't drink coffee, it's bad for you. All right, let's go back to not globals, but vehicle select. Oh, sluggish. Okay. Okay, let's try and paste now. Now it pastes in properly. There we go. Okay, as you can see, it indented it weird. So I'm going to select it, Alt-Shift-F, get her cleaned up. Okay, so what does this line of code do? It is getting text out of the text box and storing it in a string variable. If you took my grade 10 computer science course, you would have seen code very similar to this with code like this. This is how it would look in the grade 10 computer science course. This is very similar to that in Java, except it actually is a little more clear. I'm getting text out of that text box and I'm storing it in a string variable. Okay, so it's very similar to what you'd see in a grade 10 computer science course. Okay. Now comes the beginning of an if statement. So I'm going to take this piece of code. Notice it put the closing bracket in there for me. And Alt-Shift-F, I'm going to clean it up. Oh, actually, it didn't put the closing bracket in there for me. There we go. Okay, so what is this if statement doing right here? And by the way, it might have been better to actually select the entire if statement, this whole thing. Let's do that. I'm going to back up. I'm going to undo back and do that. I'm going to undo back. And I'm going to select the entire if statement. All of this from here, including the comment to here. So it includes 2 lines of code as well. Copy, paste. That really did a wacko job. So I'm going to select it all, Alt-Shift-F, format it. Now, even Alt-Shift-F does this weird thing where it doesn't indent the comments. So you can remove the comment, or it might be a good idea to indent it. If you left it where it was, that's fine too. Also now with JOption pane, you're going to need to import that, just like we did with color. Okay, so what does this code do here? This will be kind of the last thing we're doing here at the last minute. It's going to make sure that they filled in a name inside that text box. If they left it empty or nothing at all, I'm going to show them an error message, and I'm going to leave this method early. Let's see how that would work. See if that would actually do what it's supposed to do. So I'm going to try and pick a vehicle without typing a name in the text box. It says, please enter a driver's name. See, with me leaving it empty, that box is going to come up. If I do put in a driver name, that box will not come up. Okay? You can hear the countdown going in the background. But let's try and get a little bit of this done before we do that. What would be left is a big if statement like this that will be generating errors. But then there'll be this dot dispose, and then it'll go to this thing. So I think actually that would be better left for next week. So rather than trying to rush that code in there, I think I'll leave the code here, this code that spans 2 pages here in the PDF. I'm going to leave this code for Monday's class as we continue our tutorial there. Okay, because their timer ran out, which means I'm now going to stop the recording.